Welcome to episode 11 of Conversations with Women Living Well After 50. Do you like to travel? I know I do, and my husband and I have been very fortunate to travel to many places over the years. But unfortunately, COVID-19 has certainly disrupted all of our travel plans. But we can still dream about travelling, we can still make plans, and hopefully we'll be able to travel again in the not too distant future. So in case you haven't guessed it, today it's all about travel. And I'm delighted to introduce my guest, Christine Aldred from Birmingham. Now, Christine describes herself as a sort of retired mum and grandmum. She's a mad keen traveller who lives in Canberra, Australia, which she feels is the world's best kept secret. Christine suggests she has a compulsive disorder when it comes to taking photos, and she's always has some sort of camera with her wherever she goes. She takes the matter of good food very seriously, although she's a self-confessed lolly addict and doesn't do much exercise, which I might need to have to talk to her about. Christine loves every minute of life and wishes the days were longer. You can find her online at Birmingham in various places, and I'll leave the links in the comments section. So let's get started and join the conversation. Well, welcome, Christine, and it's so lovely to have you join me in conversation today. I'm very excited because I love travel as well, so I'm excited to be talking to you about that topic today.
Thank you very much, Sue. It's lovely to be here, though I must say I'm just feeling a little bit daunted. We'll wait until we get into it further and I'll relax.
Oh, don't worry, we all feel that way, but at least we're trying, aren't we? And that's what I think is the most important thing. We've got to...
And learning new skills.
Exactly. Challenge ourselves, step out of that comfort zone sometimes, and we end up surprising ourselves, really.
Yeah.
So I mentioned that I love travelling, and I know you do. So when did you actually catch the travel bug?
I think for me, it probably started quite early. I was fortunate. I grew up in a family where we did a fair bit of travelling. I went on a couple of cruises with my family 50 years ago, before cruising was really, the thing to do, although it's a bit on the nose at the moment. And we went to a couple of trips in the South Pacific. Then we had a trip to Asia, and it was just a bit of a wow, this whole new world out there. So I guess that started it. And then I spent, in my early 20s, I spent 11 months cruising, travelling Europe as a backpacker, doing the Great Big Adventure, which was, just brilliant. And it was just a revelation, that there was so much out there and so different. You'd spend a couple of hours on a train and then you'd be in this entirely different place, different landscapes, different people, different histories. And it was just the most marvellous year of my life. And I guess I just keep wanting to replicate that and, discover more.
Yes. Well, I unfortunately was the opposite. We didn't even go on holidays when I was growing up. And so it wasn't till I suppose I was around 30 that I started travelling. And then, my husband and I, over the last 25 years, we've been able to catch up a little bit. And we've done quite a few cruises as well, although, as you say, at the moment, they're not really getting very good press.
Not the place to be.
No, exactly. So what I wanted to know, in your email to me, you wrote a few things that you loved about travelling, and I wondered if you could share that with us today.
Certainly. I think, firstly, we just live on the most amazing planet. And there are just so many incredible places, incredible sceneries and landscapes. And so it's just such a joy and a privilege to be able to go around and discover some of those places. So I guess that's the one thing, the landscapes of places, but also learning about, the different people in the world, how everyone lives differently, different cultures, learning about the history. Because I think that, the best way to learn about these things is to go there in person. I love food. And so it's fantastic to be able to discover different food as you travel.
And the
So
different
it's just a whole great adventure.
Yeah, and the different cultures. I think it also makes us a little bit more open as people and more accepting. Because we
I
learn
think,
to,
yeah, that's
we learn about different cultures, we see the way people live, and we embrace that. And I think that for me, that's important with traveling. It does open up a new world, but it makes you more tolerant, I think, because
yeah,
of
absolutely.
other people and different races and just different cultures. And I find it fascinating. And the history for me is just, blows me away, because Australia, we've had the Indigenous culture here for eons, but with white Australia, we've only got a history of a couple of 100 years. So it's
That's
sort
right.
of, you go over to Europe and other places, and it's just amazing the history that's there.
Yeah, I think that's actually such an essential part of the travel, Sue. You're right. It's, we live in such a tiny pocket of the world, and there's so much out there, and it's easy to assume that what we do and how we live is the be all and end all. But
Exactly.
it's important to just learn and embrace what other people to do as well, and I think it makes us better human beings if we can, have those connections and learn more.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And it's also a way to meet new people and friends. You develop friendships, sometimes for many years after the actual time you visited. So there's so many benefits to travel. So where do you have a favourite destination? If you asked me that, I think I'd be a little bit stumped, because I couldn't just stick at one. But do you have maybe one or two favourite destinations that you would say, look, if I couldn't go anywhere else, I'd go back to there?
Yes, it's a bit like asking which is your favourite child, isn't it? So
Yeah.
you have to be a bit careful. Well, I guess I'd say firstly, I think Australia is just extraordinary. And there's a lot of, we've got so many different countries all wrapped up in one. So there's an awful lot of places that I still need to discover at home here, and I'm looking forward to doing that. Yes, lots of places that I've been to that I think are fantastic, but the ones that I probably want to keep going back to, I think there's something pretty amazing about skiing in the French Alps.
Oh.
So that's, I know that's my husband's just about favourite. But the next one I would mention is Africa. I went to Africa last year finally, after yearning to do so almost my entire life. And in fact, I'm supposed to be going to Africa in a couple of weeks for 5 weeks. Obviously, that's not happening. But we went there last year, and it was just actually more than I had anticipated. We just sort of fell in love with the place, and going out on safari in particular was just so exciting. It was way more exciting than I anticipated it to be. So, and taking photos, all day long, it was amazing.
Yes, well, I know that you love your photography, and I really like it when I see your photos on Instagram and other social media. And Africa, I've never been there, but it does have this magical, mystical sort of quality about it. And everyone that goes there seems to come back having fallen in love with the place. So,
Yep.
So hopefully COVID will settle down and you'll be able to go back there.
Yes, we'll just have to be patient.
That's exactly right. But as I said in my intro, we can still dream, we can still make our plans.
That's right.
So
look,
we'll be
to be
ready
honest,
to go.
I'm still going through my photos from the last African trip. I was ridiculously, obsessive about taking photos. Took way too many, and so now I'm paying the price of having to cull them. So that'll teach me. I've got to get that sorted before I can go again.
Yes, and so when you come back from a trip, do you actually make up, say, a photo book, or how do you record your memories? Because I know sometimes we take lots of photos, and I'm guilty of this, snap, 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 and then I come home and I've got so many, and then sometimes I don't even look at them. And,
Yes,
you
yes,
know, you sort of become a bit blasé. But I did make a few of the photo books, which I find you're more inclined to pick up and have a look
yes,
at.
yes. It's the dilemma of digital photography that we just can take so many photos so easily and so cheaply. So we just end up taking thousands of dud photos, and that's the danger. So my intention is for this one, I do want to do a photo book because I think that's lovely to have that on the, you know, the coffee table. But I also share a lot of the photos on social media, which is good as well. But I think the real trick is just culling them down, getting rid of all the rubbish ones, and just, you know, picking your special ones and putting those in an album, or flicking them across your television screen if you've got an Apple TV or something like that. You know,
Yeah.
framing some. You know, actually printing some and framing them. But
Yes.
it's a bit of a discipline.
Oh, I think so. And also sometimes you get so caught up in taking the photo that you miss the moment. You know, so
Yes,
I
yes.
try now when I go somewhere to just not use my camera and just look and soak up where I am, what I'm seeing, and the experience.
Yes.
And then I'll probably take 100 of the same shot. But I do try to just be mindful in that moment. So you've done a lot of travel. In your travel experience, have you had any experiences where things didn't quite go to plan? And if you did, how did you handle the situation?
I think things often go not to plan. I haven't had any absolutely diabolical situations, though on my first trip by myself, you know, going on the big backpacking expedition, the very first thing I did was I had my money wallet, you know, to go around my waist, all of this, everything was carefully planned. And I got stopped over at, in the Philippines on the way over at the airport, sat down and, you know, sorted out all my money, wallet and blah, 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 stood up, left the money wallet with all my money and traveller's checks. I mean, when we had traveller's checks, just got up, left it all behind and got back on the plane. So I arrived in London on my big trip with no cash, no credit card.
Oh, gosh, what a way to start.
So that was a very good lesson learned, you know. But, you know, over the years, things have gone awry. We've had a few things stolen. I've missed, you know, connections. But I think you just go with it.
Yep.
You know, you compensate, and you don't let that ruin your holiday. You work out what you have to do to fix the situation, and you carry on. Because if you dwell on something that didn't go to plan, you know, there's no point. You just have to be a bit fluid and a bit, yeah.
That's right. And it ruins the travel experience for you if you just focus on that one particular incident.
That's right.
So, yeah. Now,
in Africa, I was going to say, in Africa, they have this saying, this is Africa. So when you're traveling there, you just have to anticipate that things will go wrong. You know, things will be cancelled, things will be changed without your knowledge and what have you. And so they all have a saying over there, we'll make a plan. So whatever happens, we'll just make a plan and we'll get on with it and it'll be fine. And so you take that attitude with you, and and most of your problems are solved before they even happen.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to the point about when we were talking about different cultures. And when you say, oh, you know, we probably think where we live in Australia is the be all and end all, you get used to where you live, but you've got to be open-minded about going to a different culture where it may be totally different from what you're used to. And it's no good complaining about that, because that's why you're going there. You want to see something different. But so many times I've seen people who are getting upset and ruining their holiday over little things, when I think, well, why did, you know, I remember once I heard a couple of women, we were in Egypt looking at the pyramids, and, you know, which are just amazing. And they were saying how, oh, you know, there's so much sand around and dirt. And I'm thinking, well, you know, it is the pyramids. They weren't,
Yes,
it's not
yes.
it's not a modern skyscraper or something like
No,
that. So,
no.
they sort of were missing the point a little bit there. So it's amazing the people that you meet and their attitudes on, when you do travel. But I wanted to talk to you about how, you've got a blog and you write. So how does the travel interact with that?
Very closely, actually. Sometimes not, but sometimes very closely, because when I travel, and I can remember having thought this and felt this for many, many years, I want to capture what I see and what I feel and experience, capture it in photos, but also in words, and more so than just writing down, a diary of what happened. We got up, ate breakfast, when he cooked, took this train, blah, blah, blah. Just really capture the experience.
Yep.
And to do that, I want to write it down. I remember very, very vividly when I was 22 in having just arrived in Athens in Greece, and we were this, pack of backpackers. There was probably about 15 of us all piling into the back of a cattle truck, being transported from the port, to some hotel accommodation, which ended up being absolutely out in the sticks. But I looked up at these skies, and there was the most astonishing fluorescent display of stars in the sky, and I was just blown away by it. And I grew up, we weren't campers in my family, we didn't do much of the outdoor life sort of thing, and I sort of thought, oh my God, this sky. And I just wanted to write about it, and I couldn't, I didn't have time, because it actually takes a while to get those words ordered into a way that really represents what you see, what you feel. Yes. And so there's been lots of other times sitting in a little village in Tuscany, looking out over the hills and all these various shades of terracotta and orange and brown, and again just thinking, I want to capture these in words. And it's now that I'm not working any longer that I've got the time and the headspace to really sort of concentrate on doing this. So when I travel around and I'm taking notes and I'm making sentences in my heads and phrases, now I can actually start, putting them together, and I'm finding that very time consuming, but just a really enjoyable, worthwhile process.
Well, I think it is worthwhile. I mean, lots of people, and I've tried to do it myself, you take a travel diary with you, but you get so caught up with traveling around and perhaps overcommitting yourself, which I think something that we need to be careful of. You can't see, if you're on a time limit, you can't see everything. So you have to really just choose something and see it properly. And I think that for me, just talking to you now, perhaps at the end of each day, it's nice to just sit down and reflect on what you've seen that day, make a few notes, write it down, and just get those thoughts going. Because when you come home, even if you've got your photographs, sometimes you forget the little stories and anecdotes that happen along the way. And so I think that trying to perhaps factor in that time to reflect, write down your thoughts of what you've seen and your emotions about it. I think that really finishes off the trip. And of course, with your blog, and you also do travel articles as well, for different magazines or publications. So, the written word can sometimes be very emotive, and I think that's a good idea. So
I find with myself, I'm a busy traveller. When I travel, I don't go to sit round a pool and read a book, for a week. I'm like go and seeing and, visiting. But I'm finding I don't have time. Even if I try and make time to do that, it's too much on. So I'm now making notes, just making little notes, so that you've got enough to jolt your memory, and then you can sort of transform those later on.
Flesh it out. Now with COVID, that's really restricted us all in our travelling. And I did have a question about, do you think we should be travelling now and can we do it safely? But they've just closed our borders again on between Queensland and New South Wales. So maybe this question is a bit superfluous. But if you do have to travel, you know, what are your thoughts on travelling at the moment?
I'm watching that border actually very carefully between New South Wales and Queensland, because I've got a grandchild due in a couple of months.
Oh.
So we're hoping to cross the border soon. But yes, I don't look. Obviously, we can't go overseas. We've got border restrictions, but I don't think it's just not responsible and sensible to be going off on mad jaunts all over the place at the moment just for the hell of it. If you have to travel for a particular reason, yeah, I think we've got a responsibility to just do the right thing at the moment and stay safe, stay home as much as we can. Yeah. But I also think that we can really holiday at home. You know, wherever we are, pretend you're a tourist in your own destination, because it's incredibly difficult for all those businesses who rely on tourism. You know, businesses that are just being wiped out or decimated. So we're making a bit of an effort here at home to go out and do, you know, some things. Go and have, you know, you take away meals, you know, from a restaurant, and bake at home things, or, you know, just do what you can and take advantage of the opportunity to see your own place in a different light, you know.
That's right. Well, I live on the Gold Coast, which is a tourist hub in Australia, and you're right. I think what happens is we get so used to where we live, sometimes we take it for granted, and unless you become a tourist in your own backyard, you sometimes don't really know much about where you live at all, and someone will come from another country and they'll know more about where you live than what you do.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So it's a good opportunity.
Did I see recently that you had said that you discovered a walk, a bush sort of walk?
I'm a little bit embarrassed to talk about it, actually, because it's only 2 minutes away from where I live practically. But I go running with a friend, and she said, "Oh, this is where the park run goes. I'll meet you there." And I said, "Well, I don't know where you're talking about. I didn't realise you walked along up towards Main Beach, and just past that, it's all beautiful bushland right on the ocean, and there's a track that leads through it all, and it's just so pretty. And you know, you've got the bush and the trees, and the ocean just there, and it's so lovely to run or walk there, and it's, you know, a few minutes away from where I live. And so I was a little bit embarrassed about that, but I thought, there you go. You can find something in your own backyard that you don't even know exists.
That's right. That's right. I did a similar thing. There's a Tidbinbilla Nature Reserve here on the outskirts of Canberra. It's about 35 minutes away. So I sort of think, oh, it's so far away.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, it's world renowned. We've got all these international visitors come over to visit this amazing place, and I'd never been there. So I finally went there and I thought, I can't believe I've taken this long to get here. That's right. Yes, we should give some more credence to where we live, and I think the people who run tourism, you know, or businesses would be very grateful for that, you know, that local support as well.
That's right. And another thing, we went all the way to Alaska to have a look at whales, and we've got them in the ocean out where I live. So I don't know what it is. You just sort of tend to think, oh, well, this is where I live, you know, but they do have, there's just so many little places you can find that you just haven't made the effort to go to. And as you say, that's a bit safer at the moment, and it's still getting you out and about in a safe environment. So what do you think your top travel tip is for beginners or seasoned travellers alike? Have you got any tips that you sort of have learned over the years?
Yes, definitely. I think we touched on one before about you know, just going with the flow. If things go awry, just, you know, don't let that spoil your holiday. Get it sorted as best you can and move on. don't complain that there's too much sand on the beach or but I think the other thing I would say is do some research about where you're going, because that will just gives you so much, a wider understanding of the place you might be going to. Maybe find out a bit about its history, or for an example is we love food. We love finding great places to eat where we're going, and you can't just turn up in a big city and luck getting a fantastic place to eat. Some of those things it pays to do a bit of research online or magazines or whatever. And I've also heard another suggestion. Sorry, you go.
I just wanted to bring up a point before I forget it, that it also is good to do a bit of research, because you might be going to a country that has certain religious or other sort of traditions that you need to be aware of. Like, I remember we went to Dubai and we were there during Ramadan. So
I've done exactly the same thing.
Yeah,
exactly the same thing for 2 days.
I think you have to respect where you're going, respect the culture.
Yes.
And I find sometimes that, people don't always do that, but really you're a guest in their country and you're visiting there. So really you should be following their guidelines, and be respectful of what they believe in, which might be totally different to you. I mean, out here in Australia, you see people, they've got their, brief swimmers on and all of that sort of thing. It's sun, sand, beach. Whereas if you go to perhaps a country where the women dress more traditionally and, they like you to cover up, I think you need to embrace that as well.
Yes. You can't just impose your own views and your own culture everywhere you go, because that's just rude. It's just not a nice way to think, and it's not a nice way to travel. You're a guest in someone else's home. But back to thinking about researching and tips for travellers. One of the things that I love most doing when I'm in different places is taking a walking tour somewhere.
Yeah.
And meeting up with the locals who know the history and the hidden spots and the hidden gems and all of those sorts of things. And often you need to know about those before you get to a place, because they might only run 1 day a week or exactly, etc., or you need to book in. So I think those sort of things, doing research, can be really helpful and really, really make a difference to how you see the place when you get there.
Yeah, I agree. You're going to get so much more out of it if you know something about the place that you're going to visit, and you'll just enjoy it so much more. So anything else that you wanted to mention before we finish?
I've just thought of something, Sue. I know you're near to Brisbane, but they actually have some amazing free walking tours in Brisbane. I don't know if you know about that.
Well, I know of them, but guilty as charged, haven't been on one yet. But
I've only done one. It's a mob called Global Walking Network or something like that. I have actually done a blog on it in the past. But you can find these places throughout the world, and you just meet up with these local volunteers who just want to show you their backyard.
Yeah, and
so
you
there's
get
some
that
amazing opportunities.
First-hand knowledge, don't you? You're not on a big flashy tour where they're just glimpsing over everything. You really get to see the little back streets or the little hidden gems of a place if you go with a local, that's for sure. I remember, well, I'm going back to Dubai all the time. I don't know why, because we've been everywhere else. But it was so hot and it was Ramadan, and we were walking along and, having to stop in their bus shelters because they were air conditioned, you'd get inside and think, And anyway, we ended up hailing a cab and he took us around everywhere. And I thought it was going to cost a fortune, and it didn't. And he was just so lovely and so accommodating, and, oh, you need to go and see this, you need to go and see that, here you go, I'll take you. And we would have missed out probably on half the
Yeah.
things we saw. And that was just like a stopover on the way to, because from Australia to Europe, as you know,
That's a great stopover.
flight. So we stopped over there, but we only had a couple of days. And so that was really great to have someone who knew what the place was all about, and the little extra places that perhaps weren't quite as touristy, but you still get that lovely sense of culture and the way the people actually live.
That's right. The locals are just an amazing way of discovering a place, and you really just get to see a whole new dimension that you can't get to en masse.
So I do have one more question before we finish, but before that, what's on your bucket list in the next, well, let's pretend COVID's finished and there'll be a mad dash for everybody travelling. So have you got any places that perhaps you haven't been yet, or that you want to revisit?
Yes.
We know that Africa's on your list to revisit.
Africa was on my list. We also had on the list this year, we were going to England and Ireland.
Oh, so were we.
Chelsea Flower Show was that's a bucket list item. That's a bit sad because we were also going to see family, so hopefully we'll be able to do that soon as well. Japan is very high on my list as well, and Canada.
Oh, Canada.
They're the other two places. Yeah.
Well, we've done a couple of trips to Canada, and if I didn't live here, I'd probably live there. It's just the scenery and I love that, one side's the French side and the other side is different, and it's just it's beautiful, so you'll enjoy that.
Yes.
Okay, so before we finish, I'm going to ask you a question that I ask all of my guests, and that is, what does being a woman living well after 50 mean to you?
I guess, we can all do things to, improve our health and fitness, eating, exercising, all of that sort of thing. But I think so much of it can be an attitude, and just really embracing life, keeping interested, keeping connected,
traveling,
keeping busy, keep learning, keep traveling. I love life, and I want to be engaged, and I want more of it. And I think if you've got that love of life, I think that's really important. And I think also be kind.
Yeah.
Be kind to yourself, to everyone. Yeah. And the world's going to be a better place.
Yeah. Beautiful. That's beautifully put. And, we all have what I call a foundation of, we know we've got to live healthy, we exercise, we eat well, that sort of thing. But as I always say, there's so much more to a life lived well. And that's why with the podcast and the YouTube channel, I want to introduce people talking about all different topics, because we're learning and experiencing new things. And that just goes to making us well-rounded human beings, I think. And the fact about kindness to ourselves and to others.
That's right. But I think it's really important to find something that you love, that you're really interested in, and that inspires you to want to be involved and to keep learning and, all that sort of thing. Yeah, and I've seen, I look at, other people as they get older, who are sometimes very disinterested in life. And you think, people who say they're bored, and I'm thinking, how can you be bored? There's so many fantastic things to do. It's a bit of an art to find what makes you tick.
I think that's it, finding that thing that really sparks your interest and gets you motivated or excited about something. And you're right. We're very lucky. There's so many opportunities out there to do different things. There's got to be something for everyone. So it's just a matter of finding what really brings you joy and brings you excitement. So look, thank you. Thank you so much for joining me today, Christine. I've really enjoyed our conversation. I could talk travel for hours, and I know that when we all
You're welcome.
finally,
Lovely to be here.
I know that when we all finally get to travel again post-COVID, that we'll really appreciate the experience. But for those of you who are listening, you can find Christine through the links that I'm going to leave in the comments section. She's on Booming On, and you know, pop over and say hello to her and check out her Instagram and her photos. They're just beautiful. And if you've enjoyed today's episode, subscribe to the channel so you never miss a conversation. Share it with a friend if you think that they will enjoy the topic. If you like what you hear, leave me a review. I look forward to seeing you in our next episode of Conversations with Women Living Well After 50. And remember, until then, to embrace life and enjoy life every day. I'll talk to you soon.